Cool. Luckily, my segment's going to be really quick, very unstructured.
I thought this was the end. I forgot. I just kept going. I was getting ready for news.
Lols. No, I'm going to be very quick because I really just have like a big question mark when it comes to my topic. So I'm just going to reintroduce the podcast real quick. So welcome back to Mixed Media. We just heard from Ben and Nathan about their respective topics. Go back to our podcast list. We have playlists on YouTube. We have our different platforms on all the streaming platforms you could possibly think of. All the ones that Ben trashed a moment ago, probably. But yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, you should have a guilty conscience. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you should listen to those things because I think both of those were extremely important talks. And what I'm about to talk about are just random thoughts on one particular film. So if you're looking for the most meaningful discussion, definitely listen to the last two episodes from this week. But today I will be talking about The Birds. And The Birds is a film by Alfred Hitchcock. Ben, did you end up watching any Hitchcock lately, or?
I rewatched North by Northwest, but I've not seen The Birds.
What were your, just out of curiosity, I want to know what you thought about it afterwards.
I think it's a really great film. You can see how it influences James Bond and
yeah.
But it's a different kind of sonic world too. It's kind of cool because I'm going to be playing some Bernard Herrmann concert in next Tuesday. We're doing North by Northwest as part of that, so it's kind of cool to play that too after watching it. I don't know, it's an interesting film, and basically I don't know, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and as a sneak peek into a future episode that I'll probably do that requires me to do research and maybe even read a book, we'll find out. If I'll put that much effort into a podcast episode. But I'm just personally curious because I like films. So, I might just do this for fun and then just relay back what I learned. But fun fact about North by Northwest is it might be somewhat factually based. There's some interesting stuff. I remember I watched the film and I saw Central Intelligence Agency appear on the screen and I lost my mind because I was like, huh. I had literally just learned about, I've read and listening to interesting things about the CIA's infiltration of Hollywood, which kind of tied interestingly back into what Ben was talking about with music. What I saw, I didn't expect that because I knew nothing about North by Northwest when I went into it, which is how I like to watch films. I just put it on, and I was like, I think this might be one of those films that the CIA enjoyed because of how fun it was of a portrayal of what is actually a reality, which is an interesting thing. But anyway, that's for a different episode. This episode, I'm going to talk about The Birds. So Alfred Hitchcock is kind of an interesting director for me because I feel like, well, I've watched 4 or 5 of his films at this point. I only have 1 film left in my little library to enjoy, all physical copies, by the way. I feel like I understand him a lot better because I had heard a lot from his words, his quotes, and what people have learned from him, but I hadn't actually watched him, right, which is a completely different thing. And I feel like I clicked with a lot more than I expected to. I clicked a lot more with the writing, I think, than I expected to, because I think that is underrated part of a lot of his stuff, although North by Northwest is probably a weaker example of that. My favorites are definitely Psycho and Vertigo are just tremendous films, to me in a different category than the rest of the films I watched. But anyway, The Birds. The Birds is a sort of thriller horror thing. And it's, I forgot to put the title up. The Birds. There we go. As you can see, for those who are watching on video or on podcast, this will be the episode art. We've got a poor woman being attacked by birds. This is the plot. This is what happens in this film. Fairly simple concept. It's apparently based off of a book, although my understanding is that it was inspired by a book. The script was written based off the book. Then eventually, it just the actual relation to the book just collapsed, and they just retained the name. The book's on the screen. It's funny. It's an interesting film in the sense that it has a very simple concept, and it's trying to do a lot technically speaking for its time, in terms of special effects and all this other stuff. And it seems like an experiment in a lot of different things, one of which is the music, of which, and this is up Ben's alley pretty much, of which there is none. There's no music. Like, when I say none, I mean there's not a single note of music in this film. And I think that was an egregious error. I like, it was such a strange feeling. I was watching, I was like, it's just something, the pace, something is just, I realized there wasn't music, but I was like, but that can't just be the only reason that this just feels completely wrong. I've watched plenty of films with no music in it, or very sparse or spare music, and those films feel like they're designed that way, right? Maybe they still would have been better with music. You could make the argument depending on the film, but largely speaking, it still feels like the choice was more deliberate. Whereas here, it just feels kind of flippant. Like, for no reason, he just decided not to put music in this film. Whereas in the other films, he has plenty and plenty of music. So I found that strange. So I looked it up, and I wanted to know why he didn't put music in. Apparently, it's exactly what I said. It was an experiment. He just wanted to know what would happen, which it kind of goes into like this whole, discussion about experimenting and stuff like that. Like, okay, that's interesting. So he's trying to learn something.
Like, watch the movie without the music and being like, this is not good though, right? And then just add the music. Not that it's easy to add music, but like, I mean, it'd be possible,
So some people, I noticed in reviews, like, I've noticed a few reviews on Letterboxd and a few analyses elsewhere where people will say that the lack of music makes it more creepy. I don't know if I actually agree with that. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock's whole thing is terror, right? Like, this tension. And in his other films, there's plenty of music, and there's plenty of tension, I mean, if you watch Psycho, that thing is for being what it is, it's a kind of a white knuckle film, Vertigo has sections that are just, worse in terms of tension, and how much you're being sucked into the film than a spy thriller or something. It's just so intense, It's bizarre because people will say this makes it feel creepy, and I just don't see why. And I would like to understand better why people think that. I'm not dismissing it. I just want to understand why, because for me, it just felt empty. And I think one of the biggest differences between this and other films that have not as much music is this one's soundscape in general does not feel like it's telling a story. Like, not just the music, but the entire soundscape doesn't feel like it's telling its own story. When you're a filmmaker, you're very multidisciplinary. So every tool you've got, and even the act of choosing not to use the tool, right, is an act of trying to tell a story. And so I want all those decisions to feel deliberate. That's one of my critiques about Marvel movies with their cinematography, right? It's very sterile and expository, right? It's effective for getting the gist of for most films, right? The gist of the action, right? It's not really as purposeful. Well, most of that's because it's not even practical to make a Marvel movie that way. It's already insanely bloated as is. I can't imagine trying to do some very creative shots in the middle of the production schedule, which, whatever. That's just the casualty in the Marvel franchise. Elsewhere, though, in Hitchcock, his cinematography is extremely deliberate. His dialogue, extremely deliberate. His story structure, extremely deliberate. Everything's super deliberate most of the time. And then with The Birds, he just throws out the music and it just feels flippant, right? At least to me. So I would like to know, any Hitchcock fans out there, I would like to know, you can put it in the comments, or you can send us an email at mixedmediapodcast@outlook.com, or join our Discord or wherever. And just tell me what you think about The Birds, because I think it actually has a more polarized reception than people give it credit, because it's kind of in the Hitchcock canon, because Hitchcock made 1,000,000,001 films, but there are certain films that are the Hitchcock films, and The Birds is one of them. And I'm not sure that it's actually as universally loved in the way that his other films are loved. Just by reading reviews and like looking at what people say, it seems as though people like this for its classic nature more than they do for its like, like how it holds up, even today, right? It's like more of like, this is a interesting film in cinema's history, right? This kind of goes into like your rating philosophy, because some people include impact into the wider, field as something that's important to them when they assess how much they like something, right? How much they want to praise it. And I can understand that because this film was made insanely. I mean, when I say insanely, I mean probably immorally. I mean, they literally had tons of birds on set trained to attack people. They put food in people's hair and other parts of their clothing so that the birds would attack the actors, literally. I mean, they were trained that they didn't hurt them, but people still got hurt, is my understanding. So it's an insanely made film, and a lot of those scenes with the birds and the bird attacks are extraordinarily, has that Hitchcock tension over it. For being such a simple concept, you get some really, jarring and exciting moments, but I think I just was like, overall, I think the film was better than average. I'm not trying to, hate on the film or anything like that. I don't hate it at all. It's more like, I think the story could have been not just slightly above average. I think it could have been up there with his average works, right? If there was music. And I think Bernard does his music for all of his like big films or something like that.
I think every film that I'm aware of, all of his big films, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I think when I was watching Psycho in particular, I was noticing a lot more of that sort of like Mickey Mousing that you were talking about in prior episodes. This is why I love this podcast. I learn things and then I apply them when I watch things, so that's awesome. It was good. It was still good. There's nothing wrong with it, like it was excellent, not only excellent, but it filled the spaces in a way that the film, it told its own story. The music told its own story alongside the story. So yeah, I just thought it was bizarre. And I think it was a failed experiment. I found, interestingly enough, I put a link on their Discord, someone who attempted to score the film if it had a score. And of course, this person didn't have an orchestra play their score or anything like that. It's all electronic. But if you imagine past that, if you imagine what this person put together past that, I don't think it was like, anything insane. It just was better already just because it was there, and like these scenes where like the two main characters who have this like love tension thing going on, this, this will she, won't she, will he, won't he kind of dynamic going on. It's just so weird in those scenes where they're staring at each other and you get these long cuts to just not hear anything that sounds like it comes from their hearts. It's just strange. Like, it doesn't feel right. And
it's
just
strange too, because Herman has such strong love themes in his other Hitchcock films.
Yeah, no, exactly. Very odd. And all you're hearing, she's paddling across the ocean, and all you're hearing is like the sparse, like the soundscape is not even fully developed, which I'm not even sure I can say that's a technical problem. I just don't get it. But the whole soundscape is kind of sparse, so all you're hearing is like the kerplunks of her oars go through as she's looking across the bay, and she sees her man or future man across the bay, and it's shot beautifully. The film looks gorgeous, like like the landscape, at least the way it was reproduced in my copy, was pretty freaking gorgeous. It was very painterly. Part of that's because they actually use matte paintings for set extensions, but it blends seamlessly. You get these longing like close-ups back and forth, and you're hearing just kerplunk, kerplunk, kerplunk. It just kind of takes you out of the vibe. If you could hear the water moving and maybe the rustles of maybe if the soundscape could tell the story better, even if you didn't want to use music, right? If the environment could tell you the story of their love or their potential thing that's going on, this tension there, right? And at least that would help, but it's just kind of empty. It's just like, okay, in scenes that have no terror, right? The scene's literally just about this relationship. Why on earth would you want to make it sparse? I don't want to be creeped out in this moment. That's not even what he's going for, right? So, yeah, it's kind of strange. So anyway, that's my topic.